My Lord and my God, I firmly believe that you are here, that you see me, that you hear me. I adore you with profound reverence. I ask your pardon for my sins, and grace to make this time of prayer fruitful. My Immaculate Mother, Saint Joseph, my Father and Lord, my guardian angel, intercede for me. Imagine yourself having to deal with a problem for a long time, a very, very long time. Not just months, not even few years, but many, many years. It could be that you were born with a handicap, such as poor eyesight, stuttering, attention deficit disorder, and so on. In the medical world, it is known as developmental disabilities. These are classified into categories such as cognitive disabilities, motor disabilities, vision, hearing, and speech disabilities, and behavioral disorders. No matter what kind of handicap or disability it might be, the person affected by this suffers a lot and suffers for a very long time, even for the entire life. From supernatural perspective, this situation and many other such life situations is an opportunity to practice the virtue of patience, trusting in the words of Jesus. By your patient endurance, you'll gain your souls. Jesus, in today's gospel, we're going to witness the truthfulness of your words. St. John tells us how on a feast day of the Jews, he went up to Jerusalem. And in Jerusalem, at the sheep gate, there was a pool called Bethesda in Hebrew with 5 porticos. Incidentally, according to the Biblical Archaeology Society, when Bethesda pool was excavated in the late 19th century, scholars at that time had difficulty grappling with the puzzling figure of it having 5 porticos. This, according to them, was inaccurate since it did not fit in with the typical Jewish pools, which were areas of ritual purification with 4 porticos. However, upon subsequent excavations and careful studies, they discovered that it did in fact have 5 porticos. What the excavation revealed was a rectangular pool with 2 basins separated by a wall, thus a 5-sided pool, and each side had a portico. Well, Jesus, on that day, as usual, a large number of ill, blind, lame, and crippled had gathered together, all patiently waiting for an opportunity to be healed. I don't know how many months or years each of those persons gathered there that day had been suffering from their disabilities, but their sufferings were real and quite burdensome. Then, Jesus, your eyes turned and focused on just one man among that large crowd. You gazed upon a man who had been ill for 38 years. How did you, Jesus, know that? That this man had been suffering for such a long time, for 38 years. From what illness? Was he born like that? Or he was born healthy, but a terrible illness ended up crippling him like that? Or an accident happened which damaged perhaps his spine and the central nervous system? Jesus, what is important is that you knew that this man had been suffering for such a long time, for 38 years. And in turning toward him, you asked him, do you want to be well? Jesus, I can hear the tone of your voice when you asked him this. A very kind voice, a very welcoming voice, a very reassuring voice. Hearing your voice, the man said to you, Sir, I have no one to put me into the pool when the water is stirred up. When I'm on my way, someone else gets down there before me. Jesus, when you heard this man say this, you heard not only what he told you, but with the tone with which he said it to you. A voice of loneliness, a voice of sadness, a voice of helplessness, yet at the same time, a voice of hope, a voice of perseverance, and a voice of long-suffering patience. He had been suffering for 38 years, yet he never gave up. He continued to trust in divine providence. He believed that one day his patience would be rewarded. Well, this man, on that day, received the great reward from you, Jesus, for his patience. Because you told him, rise, take up your mat, and walk. As simple as that, as clear as that, as powerful as that. Because immediately the man became well, took up his mat, and walked. Yes, Jesus, by your patient endurance, you'll gain your souls. Not only are your words true as applied to life's problems, but much more importantly for the salvation of my soul. This is true, Jesus, because during this Lent, we have been meditating more frequently about your passion and suffering. The word passion comes from Latin root pati, meaning suffering or enduring. Thus, compassion means to suffer with. The compassionate aren't immune to other people's pain. So Jesus, your passion represents your divine patience with which is long-suffering, enduring, and limitless. You chose Jesus to suffer for us, and by your suffering, by your infinite patience, we have been healed. Just think of that, the enormity of human sinfulness, the unimaginable weight of all that which oppressed Jesus so much to the point of agony which he endured in the Garden of Gethsemane. Yes, Jesus, you speak to us from your personal experience. By your patient endurance, you'll gain your souls. You're reminding us over and over again that when we suffer for whatever reason and try to bear it well with your divine help, then, like this man who was patient with his own sufferings for 38 years, we will be greatly rewarded. St. Francis de Sales, a doctor of the Church, invites us in his classical work, The Introduction to a Devout Life, to call upon, often, to mind that our Savior redeemed us by bearing and suffering. And in like manner, we must seek our own salvation amid sufferings and afflictions, bearing insults, contradictions, and troubles with all the gentleness we can possibly command. Jesus, I want to examine myself on that. What do you think, Jesus? Do you think that I'm a patient person? Do you think that I bear insults well? I certainly don't want to insult anyone or be insulted by anyone. However, when I'm insulted or think that I am, how do I normally react to that? With annoyance, with critical thoughts, with anger? Or do I choose to control these negative reactions by thinking immediately about how often you, Jesus, were patient with me whenever I had ignored you, I was indifferent to you, and I was unfaithful to you? At that moment, I catch your divine gaze, like this man at the pool of Bethesda, and I hear your voice in the depth of my own conscience. Rise, take up your mat, and walk. Rise, do not let your suffering crush you. Take up your mat, face your problem squarely with my divine strength. Walk, embrace your suffering as if you're embracing my cross, and I will reward you greatly. St. Francis de Sales further advises that we should not limit our patience to this or that kind of trial, but we should extend it universally to whatever God may send or allow to befall us. How true that is. Again, the story of the man at the pool of Bethesda is very instructive. 38 years, long years of suffering and patience. He could not and did not put any conditions to his own suffering. He suffered whatever the consequences resulted from his handicap or disability. Perhaps he could not breathe well some days. Perhaps he had severe aches and pains in his muscles and joints frequently. Perhaps he was insulted by the cruel bystanders who did not move a finger to help him. Whatever he had to suffer, he suffered it all. He bore them well, very patiently, meekly, and humbly. Jesus, During the remaining short period of Lent, help me to think of this long-suffering man in a right way, compare myself with him. Am I able to suffer and be patient even one day, compared to his 38 long years? Do I regularly control my impatience in the traffic, listening to someone who is slow of speech, waiting for an answer to my email inquiry which I sent just yesterday, and so on? Or on the contrary, do I get easily frustrated, not only with others but with myself? In these and many other similar situations in my daily life, Jesus, help me to understand that you will reward me, my efforts, to be patient with your own divine, merciful, and infinite patience towards me. And as a consequence, you, Jesus, will help me to grow in holiness through patience. As St. Cyril said, patience conquers temptations. It bears tribulations and martyrdoms to their ends. It gives our faith the firmest of foundations. It sees that our hope grows to maturity. It directs our actions so that we stay in the path of Christ as you advance with his help. Finally, it is what makes us persevere as children of God. I thank you, my God, for the good resolutions, affections, inspirations that you have communicated to me in this meditation. I ask your help to put them into effect. My Immaculate Mother, Saint Joseph, my Father and Lord, my guardian angel, intercede for me.